is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to put together a $1,300 gaming PC build step by step for 2020. I'm going to run you through how to put it together, including all the fiddly cabling and wires, go through each of the parts I selected and why before booting this machine up to see exactly how it performs in some of the most popular titles. So without any further ado, make sure to get subscribed if you aren't already, but let's jump into it. Now, as always, I'm going to kick things off by installing our CPU, M.2 SSD, and our RAM into the motherboard. And this motherboard is brand new from MSI. It's got some really cool features like a built-in I/O shield and a 2.5 gig Ethernet port, but more importantly supports our CPU choice for today's build. Speaking of which, this is AMD's brand new Ryzen 5 3600 XT and is super easily installed by lining up the golden triangle on the processor with the triangle on your CPU socket. We're then going to gently drop the chip into place, give it a little bit of a wiggle and pop the arm back down. With 6 cores and 12 threads and a boost clock speed of up to 4.5 GHz, this is like the Sonic of CPUs. Next up, we're going to install our RAM into the motherboard, and this is ADATA's brand new XPG Spectrix D50. Not only does it look really good with, of course, plenty of RGB up top, it's got a fast 3200 MHz clock speed, which is perfect for today's build. We're going to pull back the clips on the second and third DIMM slots and go ahead and line the notch on the gold strip of our memory with the notch on the motherboard. You're then going to apply even pressure to both sides and it will clip into place. Repeat for as many RAM DIMMs as you've got, and that's really all there is to it. I'm next going to install the M.2 SSD while our motherboard is still out and easy to access. And for this, wait there, I'm going to need a teeny tiny little screwdriver. The first step is to remove this M.2 heatsink on the motherboard, which is intended to keep your SSD cool. Specifically, this is the XPG S40G and is installed by once again lining the notch on the gold strip up with the notch on the M.2 slot of your motherboard. We then need to secure the drive down with this diddy little screw that comes in your motherboard box. With the motherboard assembly all complete, I'm going to go ahead and move the whole thing into the case. And this is a case from MSI that looks honestly pretty incredible, with 4 addressable RGB fans, a bit of tempered glass here and there, and USB-C. This case is, really ready for 2020. I'm going to take our motherboard and line up each of the holes on the motherboard with the corresponding standoffs inside of our case. The best way to do it is to slide the I/O shield with the audio ports at the bottom through the cutout at the back of the case, and we can use this included bag of screws to secure it down. Now then, before we install our CPU cooler and our graphics card, I'm going to plug up our power supply and do a few of our cables while everything is still easy to access. For the PSU, I've got a 650 watt fully modular unit from Cooler Master. I've also got these XPG RGB cable extensions, which kind of compete with the new ones out from Lee, so we're going to see how they look. First though, we need to spin the case around to make way for the installation of our power supply. We also need to plug up a few cables to the PSU unit, including a 4+4 pin CPU power connector, the fat 24 pin motherboard power cable, one of these dual 6+2 pin GPU power harnesses, as well as a string of SATA power cables. The unit is then going to slide through the back of the case with the fan facing downwards, and we're going to secure it into place with 4 of these screws that came included with our case. I'm now going to grab our 24-pin RGB power extender, and this looks so far so good. That is just going to clip into our 24-pin motherboard header, with the female end then just plugging up to the 24-pin power supply cable. This also has an addressable RGB connector, which we can just plug up to the included case controller. That's super convenient. Next up, I'm also going to plug up our 4+4 pin CPU power connector to the top left of our motherboard. Finally, on the cable in front, we need to plug up our front panel connectors, which make these ports at the top of the case basically work at all. First up is our HD audio connector, and this goes to the bottom left of the motherboard. Next up is USB-C, and this goes to the right-hand side of the motherboard, once again at the bottom. system. Next to USB 3, we've got our JFP1 connectors, and that's for like our power and reset switch, and these can be a bit fiddly, so take your time, but I'll pop a diagram on your screen now to try and make the whole thing a little bit easier. And then finally, because this case has a USB-C port, we've also got a USB-C header, which is kind of cumbersome, it's kind of delicate, so once again, be careful, don't force it, and you're not going to have any problems. The next step today then, before we install the graphics card, is actually to pop in our CPU cooler. And this is a really great budget option that does lack RGB, but is going to look great nevertheless. And for this, we are going to need the manual, unfortunately. The first step though is to remove the pre-installed mounting hardware, just like so. And we're going to grab this AMD specific bag, reusing the backplate you get with the motherboard, and securing these brackets on with these spacers and longer screws. You know what? I actually kind of dig that. It looks good. Which leads us nicely onto our final component today, the graphics card. And this is another component today from MSI, and is a bit of a beast. Look at the size of that graphics card. As far as 1440p gaming at 60 FPS goes, this is the sweet spot. And a bit of 4K gaming is not going to look out of place in this build either. To install the graphics card, we need to remove our second and third PCIe slot covers, which can be done just like so. Remember to remove this little sticker, and this black plastic cover, and slide the GPU in. That can then be easily secured down with 2 screws, just like so, before popping the protective PCIe cover back onto the rear of the case. And grab these other 2 PSU extension cables and plug these up into place. And that pretty much wraps up the actual build process, which means there's only one thing to do before we jump in to see exactly how this performs. And that's to see how good it looks when it's all powered up. Roll the montage. Okay then, now you've seen just how good this system looks when it's all powered up, let's dive in and see exactly how it performs. I've tested 7 of the most popular gaming titles so we can get a really even picture, and the chances are one of your favourite games is probably covered on this list. First up on the list is GTA 5. At 1440p medium to high settings with the render bars set to around about halfway, you're looking at an average FPS of 88 frames per second. The game looks fantastic and really never drops below 60 FPS in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode, which gives you a really good idea of all the different scenes you're going to encounter in GTA 5. And the benchmark mode here also means you can go back and compare against my other builds and see how they perform and compare all of the results. Next up is Overwatch, my favourite game on the list today, and at 1440p ultra settings we're pinned at 70 frames per second. Overwatch looks great and is actually fairly easy to run. 1440p ultra settings is no mean feat, and it does of course mean if you wanted those 120 FPS esports level frame rates at 1080p, this machine could also cover that base no problem. The first of the Battle Royale games on today's list is Call of Duty's Warzone. At 1440p high settings, you're looking in the region of 80 frames per second in terms of the average frame rate, and the game looks once again visually fantastic. Consistently above 60 FPS means you get some really great consistent gaming performance, and once again over 100 FPS at 1080p or even at 1440p slightly lower settings is easily possible. Talking of stupid high frame rates, CSGO is next on the list today, and at 1440p high settings you're looking in the region of 200 FPS. No need to drop the resolution down or to drop the visual settings down to get those really high frame rates. CSGO's got you covered out of the blocks. And as far as CSGO standards go, the game actually looks pretty good graphically too. Next up is Fortnite. It's the second Battle Royale title today, and one of those games that just won't go away. And, you know, it is super fun, I do get it. At 1440p high settings, you're looking at an average of 124 frames per second. You guys always ask me to cover Fortnite, so if you're one of them, make sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help me out. Next up today is Apex Legends, the final of the Battle Royale titles, and at 1440p medium settings, you're looking 80 to 100 plus frames per second. There was quite a lot of fluctuation. Apex does tend to really vary in its kind of minimum, average and maximum frame rates, but the fact it never really goes below 70 FPS means you're never going to have any issues. And when it does, you know, shoot up to 120, that's just a bit of a bonus really, isn't it? Let's be honest. The final game today then is Forza Horizon 4. I absolutely love this game. Forza Horizon 3 is like my all-time favourite title, so 4 is even better. 1440p ultra settings, you're looking well over 100 FPS, and that's once again tested in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode. So much like GTA 5, you want to go back and compare my other builds, and you're going to get some really easily repeatable and comparable results that you can even try at home on your own system. So if you're thinking of upgrading and not sure, you know, how much of a step up this is, then these benchmark modes are the place for you. With that being said though, I think that pretty much wraps it up for today's video. If you did enjoy it, make sure to give it a big old like rating and get subscribed. Comment in the comments section below. I don't really know where else you comment. And let me know if you got any questions or feedback about today's video. Thank you very much for watching though, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.